Hello there, and thank you for joining this webinar with AsiaInfo on the topic of monetizing customer insights, an incredibly topical topic, I guess. My name is Alex Leslie, publisher of Disruptive Views, and today I'm joined by Dr. Andy Tiller, who is VP of Product Marketing at AsiaInfo. So let's just get straight into it. Andy, tell me what was behind the research you recently did on this topic.
Thanks, Alex. Yes, so what motivated this was we were seeing a great deal of interest from our telco customers, especially mobile network operators, in making more use of their valuable customer data that they collect in the course of their normal business. The technology is now there to help them to exploit this data in new ways, but we were seeing a lot of different attitudes and different readiness to use the technology. Our basic thesis was that many operators would like to become more like the large internet players in how they use the data. For the internet players, those customer insights really drive their business model, whereas for telcos, it's been different in the past. That customer data they've gathered has been a byproduct of their profitable communication services. And however, this situation is changing. Operators need to develop new business models as they face declines in their traditional core service revenues. And one of the ways they could potentially do that is through better exploitation of the customer data that they have, better use of that data. And so we wanted to understand the different operator attitudes to that, whether they're ready to do so technically, and also whether they're motivated to do so.
So I guess just sort of in the press and so on, you're beginning to see the first examples of this. Do you have a couple of examples to set the scene a little bit before we get into the survey itself?
Yes, really there are a couple of different options. Operators can either make more use of their customer knowledge, for instance, contextual awareness, to upsell and cross-sell their own products and services. So an example of that would be, for example, I'm running low on my data balance and I'm watching video on my phone. That would be a good time for an operator to offer me a day pass for video. I can watch video all day, 24 hours, and just a fixed price, no per megabyte data charges. So that's good for me, it's good for the operator, everybody wins, it's a good experience. So that's a traditional model where new technology can now help the operator to understand the customer's context. What do they need right now? What help can we offer them? Not necessarily just about upselling and cross-selling. Often the motivation is helping the customer to have a better experience. Beyond that, there is the possibility that operators could use their customer insights to benefit third parties. So promoting their digital service provider partners' services, essentially through understanding which customers would be interested in their partner services and promoting those services at the right time in the right place through the right channel. And beyond that, potentially also selling customer data or insights to third parties, of course, with the right opt-in permissions from customers, is another route to potentially creating new revenue. So essentially either by adding more value to partner services and therefore justifying a share of the revenue, or else by directly selling their customer insights to third parties. And we're seeing a lot of these things happening piece by piece around different markets, but we haven't really seen a global aggregation of attitudes and readiness, and that's what we set out to do.
Yeah, funny if I was going to say that they're excellent examples, but I suspect what we're going to find out in the next few slides is exactly what the rest of the field is thinking and doing. So let's get on with it, I think. Very interesting.
Sure. So the approach we took was to commission research company Analysis Mason to carry out a global survey of 50 operators from all parts of the world, really focusing on readiness and attitude to monetizing customer insights. You can see from the graph here that we got roughly even split between Europe, Middle East and Africa, and the Americas, 14 operators in each region, and Asia Pacific, slightly fewer, 8 operators there. So 50 in total, and the distribution of people that we talked to, or who Analysys Mason talked to, largely they were in general management, product management, sales and marketing roles, so coming up with the offers that face the customers. A handful were in IT and project management, so the guys that implement the IT systems that enable this. But mostly it was focusing on the market-facing people. So that was the breakdown of the survey respondents. The survey was confidential, so we won't be telling you operators' names today. But in our white paper, we have a number of quotes, anonymized quotes, which are quite interesting and revealing. And actually, let's start with a quote on the next slide. This is actually not a quote from an operator. Analysys Mason also interviewed one large internet player, and I think this sets the bar and shows you the attitude that those large internet companies have to this valuable data. They said, you know, this particular internet company said, without data we wouldn't exist. We don't ship goods, we don't manufacture anything, we just provide an electronic digital service. So the data is the heart of the whole business. That's how they add value to the products and services that are traded through their website, is by understanding their customers' needs and providing the right offer to the right customer at the right time.
Interesting. I'm guessing that if you ask the same question, or if you got an equivalent quote from an operator, they would, you know, about what their business was. I still think there are probably a few that would, in fact, many that would say, well, the network, running the network. So it's very interesting to see the shift that's happening. Yes,
and that's only natural, of course, because that has been the large internet players and the operators have had very different business models in the past. Now, with the converging digital economy, operators and large internet players increasingly are competing with each other, and at the same time, you know, operators need to develop new business models to replace the declining revenues from those traditional services. So now is the time to ask these questions. Now's the time to figure out, you know, a lot of operators are figuring out what they can do to better monetize those customer insights.
Okay.
So let's start by looking at the first question, which we asked operators to tell us the priority that they give to real-time contextual marketing. So that's essentially personalized marketing offers based on understanding the customer's needs, the customer's context, the customer's preferences, and knowing that in real time. Real-time data sources, for example, include, you know, account balance. Am I running low on my data balance now? What apps am I using on my smartphone? Did I just tweet a complaint about the operator? What content am I currently viewing? What's my current location, etc. So those real-time those kinds of things build up a real-time context for each individual customer, and what the large internet players are good at doing is exploiting that by, you know, turning that into an understanding of a customer's need and offering them something they want. So we found that 2/3 of the operators surveyed are placing very high importance, high or very high importance on the ability to do this. As we'll see later, that doesn't necessarily translate to readiness, but it certainly translates to motivation. So interestingly, 100% of the operators in Asia Pacific rated this as a high or very high priority, but overall 2/3 of operators are giving this a real amount of attention at the moment.
But why do you think APAC is so kind of universally committed to this idea, whereas the others are still obviously a little bit unsure?
Well, I think once, you know, we know the Asia-Pac market very well. It's AsiaInfo's core market, and I think these results do ring true. Even though there's only 8 operators here, we do see Asia-Pac as a very innovative market, very competitive. Operators are always trying new things. They're trying to gain every possible advantage they can. So we think that, you know, that may be one of the reasons why they're so highly motivated about making better use of their customer insights. I'm not saying that Western operators are not, but I think maybe opinion's more divided here. We do see some operators who are very advanced in their thinking and ambition, but some who are much more conservative.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the priority. We then asked them about how they perceive their capability versus the large internet players. And it's revealing to see that 2/3 of operators perceive themselves as being at least 2 years behind in their capabilities with real-time contextual marketing offers. So nearly all of the operators surveyed believe they're behind. Only 6% believe they're as sophisticated as the large internet players already. But most think that they're a long way behind, 2 years or more. And interestingly here, the Asia-Pacific region seems to be slightly more optimistic. Only half of operators in Asia-Pacific that we surveyed believe they're more than 2 years behind. But clearly, even there, there's a perceived big gap. The operators believe they are less technically capable or less able to use those customer insights to generate money.
So it certainly seems to ring true from recent conferences and presentations I've seen, but a lot of them do actually now come from APAC, and the sort of main theme of the presentation seems to be partnering with internet giants or internet players, and also a sort of much more open attitude perhaps to using the data in conjunction with the partner or by themselves. Yeah, that certainly rings true for me.
Okay, so the next 3 questions we asked them were really about their technical capability. Are they ready to be able to get data, process the data, and use the data? And the first question was about their ability to use the data. If they had actually identified an individual customer need, can they send that individual customer a relevant campaign? So here we found a picture where clearly most operator campaign management capabilities and marketing capabilities are targeted at the mass market. That's natural. But it seems that very few have developed the capability to send a personalized message to a target of 1. Only 8% of the operators we surveyed had that capability if they were aware of an individual customer's need to send that individual customer a message at the right time. So I think there's clearly some technical work that's needed here to develop the campaign and marketing capabilities of the IT systems to enable the ability to deliver a personalized message. So that was the first technical question we asked them. Secondly, we asked them about the capability to discover an individual customer's need. So this is the contextual marketing complex event processing to identify multiple events that add up to a customer's need. Big data processing to take data from unstructured data sources such as social networks and to create meaningful insights from that. And we found here, again, quite a mixed picture. Here we actually asked those operators that had expressed high interest in this area to answer the question and compared that with operators with a low interest. And you can see, of course, the operators with a higher interest are doing more technically. That's to be expected. But even the operators with high interest, many of them don't have all of the capabilities you would expect. So most do have centralized campaign management capabilities, but less than half have complex event processing, and only 70% have got big data analytics. In fact, less than a quarter have both complex event processing and big data analytics capabilities. So we can see another gap here. There's a difference between an operator's motivation to monetize their customer insights and their ability to process the data. And finally, perhaps even more fundamentally, our third technical question was about the data sources themselves. Do operators have access to all of the data to feed into their data processing and data analytics tools? And here again, we saw quite a mixed picture. The graph here needs a bit of explanation because we asked the operators to rank these types of data in terms of the importance they give to them in their marketing campaigns. So anything above the line is used a lot, anything below the line is not used so much. And we see a clear picture that even for the operators that are interested and motivated, it's mostly static data, customer profile data from the CRM system, historic CDR data from the billing system, which is used to understand the customer and to put the customer into a relevant target market segment. Not so much use of social network data and very little use of real-time data from the BSS system, such as the real-time balance or location, or from the network, such as geofencing and applications that are currently in use on a smartphone, for instance. So there's a difference here between that static data, which is very useful for targeting the right customer, and the real-time data, which is necessary for targeting the right customer at the right time. So it's that contextual awareness that it seems that access to those data sources, the real-time data sources, is something that not all operators have got, or even those that do are not necessarily making priority use of that data.
So that's a less optimistic slide by quite a long way, because I guess we know that it has to be a combination of historical data and what your customer is doing at the moment that allows you to, enables you to actually do that real-time contextual offering. So perhaps this is a proper wake-up call here.
Yes, I think that there clearly are some technical barriers to operators doing the kinds of contextual marketing that the large internet players do. But there are other barriers as well. And on the next slide, we asked operators to tell us about what's stopping them, essentially. Is it just these technical issues, sorting out the IT platforms, or other things? And the clear message we got back was that for most operators around the world, their number one constraint, they believe, is the regulatory environment. We often see operators complaining that there's an unfair playing field, that not a level playing field in terms of regulation for what they are allowed to do versus what the internet players that run over the top of their networks are allowed to do. And use of customer data is one of those areas where they believe there are differences. So they believe they have a higher barrier, a higher regulatory barrier, and that is actually preventing them innovating in this area. This is especially true in Europe, where you can see this was by far the largest barrier. It's also true in the Asia-Pacific region. Interestingly, not so much in the Americas. In fact, in the Americas, it was really the technical barriers that we just talked about on the previous slides, lack of access to data, for example, which is perceived as the biggest barrier.
That's interesting. Sorry, just to dive in. I didn't realize that privacy issues were a big issue in APAC. I thought Europe was certainly where they were perceived to be huge. But, interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, I think the regulatory environment is diverse in Asia. It's not so much one big regulator, clamping down on the region as we have with the EU here in Europe. But nevertheless, regulation is perceived as a barrier. What you're allowed to do with customer data, there are strong rules in different parts of Asia. I think also interesting here is the things that are not perceived as barriers. So lack of demand is clearly not perceived as a barrier. We saw that earlier. Operators are motivated. They're not they're not prevented from doing this by lack of interest inside the company. But perhaps more interestingly, we asked them about fear of losing customer trust and loyalty, which is obviously a potential with these types of offers. If customers feel that their data is being used in a way that compromises their privacy, and they would react negatively. And we know operators are concerned about that, very concerned about their brand image and the trust and loyalty of their customers. But it doesn't appear here to be a barrier to their use of, a barrier to them pursuing these types of monetization capabilities for their customers' personal data. And we wondered why that was. Some hints we got from the interviews and other anecdotal data suggest that perhaps there's two reasons for this. The first thing is that this is an area that's entirely within their control. It's up to an operator to come up with use cases which are helpful to their customers at the same time as helpful to them, and they can control that themselves. If they're marketing guys have good ideas, then customers will respond positively to that. So perhaps that's one reason. Another reason is that I think this is a sequence of barriers. It's like a set of hurdles. If you're running a hurdles race, you have to get over the first hurdle before you worry about the next one. And clearly, if the regulator is, or if you perceive the regulator is preventing you from even getting started, there's no point in starting even, then you won't get to the developing the use cases and worrying about whether they're going to upset your customers. So I think here we're seeing regulation as perceived as a big barrier right at the start that's preventing the process getting going. Technology following behind that. If we can figure out ways to do this that are legal and socially acceptable, then what's next? Can we get the data? Can we process it, and so on? And finally, can we develop the right use cases so that customers respond positively rather than negatively to this?
Interesting. Or perhaps operators aren't exactly aware just yet about how big an asset the customer trust is, and they sort of are not quite there, because I'm finding that trust and loyalty is probably their biggest asset, apart from obviously the network and so on. But that's a very interesting graph, actually.
And we do see that. I don't think this reflects a lack of care that operators have about their customers' personal data privacy, or a lack of concern for their own, brand reputation. I think, we see all the time that telcos are heavily excited and suffer a lot if they leak customer data or use customer data in a way that's not legal or socially acceptable. So there is a big concern about that. I think it's just that that's not the concern right now, because there are many other hurdles in the way before we get to that. And where we're working with operators that are taking a more ambitious approach and really trying to work around, find the use cases that work around the regulatory issues and social concerns, they're positive and optimistic that they can do things which are of benefit to their customers as well as to them. They really believe they can create a win-win, and that's something the technology does allow today.
Excellent. Okay.
So we then went on to try to understand the motivation a bit more. Really trying to distinguish between those two use cases: the use of customer data to upsell and cross-sell operators' own services versus the creation of totally new business models where the data itself is sold directly or indirectly to generate money. And what we found here was a mixture again. Many operators see their motivation for this as being to understand their customers better so that they can sell them the right communication services at the right time. So using customer insights better to sell their own products and services. A smaller number are saying they see a need for a fundamental shift towards new business models which are driven by the customer insights, just like the large internet players have. What they're not saying is that they want to go to very advanced things like machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms and so on. That seems to still be in the realm of research. I think in the short term, they know they've got good customer data. If they could only process it and exploit it, they know they can do a lot more with it to sell their own services. Next stage is to find other ways to make money with it. So let's see if we can put it all together and draw some conclusions. And we found that one way to do that was to create some categories. So we took the answers that we got to the technology readiness questions, particularly those ones about access to data sources, ability to process the data with the relevant technology, and the ability to target individuals with campaigns. And we combined that into a readiness score, which you see along the x-axis of our chart here. And then on the y-axis, we gave each operator in the survey a vision score. And this was related to their responses about how they want to use the data. Are they intending to create new business models or just stick to their own business? And about their perception of the importance given to this type of activity within the company. So And when we plotted each operator on this chart, you can see that we get all over the place, results, which is interesting because it suggests that vision and readiness are not at all correlated. And here's why. So first of all, we have, of course, quite a large number who we categorize as unbelievers, essentially neither ready with the technology nor with a particular vision for exploiting the data that they've got, monetizing their customer insights. So quite a lot of operators across all regions fall into the category of unbelievers. But we have quite a few in the other three categories. So some are the head downers. So we call these guys head downers because they're really focusing on their existing business and they want to utilize their insights, customer insights, to drive their existing business more. So these guys, many of them have actually implemented advanced technology and they're focused now on creating the use cases to exploit that. So those guys are the head downers. And then we have a completely different category. They're opposite. They are the warriors. So they have the vision. They know they want to generate new business models. They want to find ways to create more value from their customer data, not just to drive their own business, but to drive totally new business models. But they're not ready. They've not done anything. They don't have the technology. They don't have the data. So these guys are the warriors. And then we have a handful in the top right-hand corner who have it all. They have the technology, they have the data, they have the vision, and they're pressing full steam ahead. So we call these the transformers. They're transforming their IT, they're transforming their business in order to make better use of their customer data and monetize it. So this is the reason why we see the results all over the map, because essentially it's down to different attitudes. Different motivations. And what we found in the survey and through the customer interviews was that, if you take any particular region, you get at least one in every box. It's not a regional thing. You can't say, the Americans are focused on it, or the Asia Pacific even are focused on it, and others are not. Here it really seems to be down to the individual operator. Each one has its own strategy, its own approach, its own attitudes, and and therefore we're seeing this picture, which is really quite diverse.
Very good. And I'm going to jump ahead, if I might, to the next slide, because I've flicked ahead. Because to me, this sums up the situation very well, where it basically says operators have the potential to do what we do. This is a large internet player. Now, although there are some legal and technical challenges, and they're not to be underestimated, there are still silos, data silos, politics all at work. The largest constraint is the current mindset, and I completely agree with that. They don't have the right mindset that data is the most important thing they have, and I think that's absolutely right. They are still very much, and it's not a criticism, but they're very established, very risk averse. They always have been. In fact, I was in a seminar not so very long ago with some telcos from Europe, and I was sort of presenting some of the examples, rather like you presented right at the beginning there, Andy, and so wouldn't that be a really cool idea? And I was slightly expecting, gosh, that's a great idea, we must go back and do something about this. So the attitude was, well, but they don't want to upset the customers, and might have to take that kind of idea to our ethics committee, and somebody else sort of say, oh, I'll probably have privacy issues, and we'd have to work those through. And I think to me that really does sum up the different attitude. I think a couple of articles recently, I sort of adapted a very sort of hackneyed phrase that was been going around North America for a very long time, and just sort of said to people, you really got to think, you've got to ask yourself the question, what would Google do? If they came up with a great idea, would they launch it, see whether it worked, take it back in-house, develop it, learn from it, work out what investment was needed, and launch it again? Yes, of course they would. And I don't think operators have the same mindset. But having said that, I think your survey is very useful, because it shows that there is an acknowledgement, there is a need and a vision to do interesting things and really support their customers in much more personal ways. So hopefully they can execute on this in the next couple of years and possibly even catch up.
Really, yes, you're right, Alex. I think that's certainly been an issue in the past, and data has not been the most important asset an operator has. They've had plenty of other important assets. But in the future, I think things change. I think what the survey reveals is a couple of things. Firstly, there is a lot of potential. And secondly, that you can't really say operators are all alike in this. There's a very vast difference between their attitudes, approaches, technical readiness. And some are very ambitious and looking forward in this area and doing a lot. Others are holding back, the unbelievers. Probably, again, if we did the survey in greater depth and talk to the IT departments more than the marketing departments, we might find different views amongst the different communities, even within an operator, about what's technically possible and so on. But overall, I think the picture we're seeing is that, not just from the survey, but from our experience with customers, is that there is a huge amount of interest in this area now, and it is something for the future.
No, I didn't mean to be particularly negative, because I'm beginning to be convinced that operators really do understand this and are making plans. I also think there are different sort of layers and different approaches to this. And I suppose we do tend, from perhaps our side of the fence, to think about the large internet players and how they support those kind of offerings and get into that kind of mindset. But I think some operators are going slightly down a middle road and providing different ways of enabling large internet players to provide slightly richer experiences, providing the security piece around, quality networks and that kind of thing. And so I think there are, as you said, it will depend very much on the individual approach. But I think the positive thing is that they're all mindful of it and making plans and getting going. Very interesting survey.
Good. Thank you, Alex. How about we open up to questions? But quickly, just a reference for those who are online, that there's a white paper on our website. You can follow the link shown here to download the white paper to read all the full details of the survey. So I hope you enjoy reading that. But now I think what we'd like to do is just to open it up for questions. Please submit your questions in the chat panel, and both Alex and I will remain online to answer any questions you have. So thanks for your attention so far.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Andy, for the presentation, and we look forward to answering those questions.